Clara's frozen fingers lost their grip. Her daughter slipped from her arms into the snow and she couldn't pick her up. 5 days without food. 3 days running from a man who wanted to steal her child. Now the blizzard was finishing what Marcus started. "Mama, I can't feel my feet." "I know, baby. I know." She collapsed beside Lily, pulling the child against her chest. This was how they'd die together, alone, forgotten, in a Wyoming winter. Then she heard hooves. Stay with me until the end, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The snow had turned to knives. Clara Whitmore dragged her daughter through drifts that reached her thighs, each step a battle she was losing. Lily's small body hung limp against her shoulder, the child's breathing shallow and wrong. "Mama," Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm so tired." "I know, sweetheart. Just a little further." She was lying. There was no further. The wagon had broken down 3 miles back when the axle snapped on hidden ice. Their horse, Old Bell, had gone lame trying to pull them free. Clara had to make a choice. No mother should make leave the horse to die slow or use their last bullet for mercy. The gunshot still echoed in her ears. "I'm cold, Mama. Hold on to me, baby. Just hold on." But Lily's grip was weakening. 5 days since their last real meal. The trading post owner in Cheyenne had looked at Clara's worn dress and empty purse and laughed in her face. "Ain't got charity for runaways," he'd said. "Whatever you're running from, it ain't my problem." She'd begged. God help her, she'd gotten on her knees in front of that man and begged for a handful of cornmeal, for anything to feed her daughter. He'd spat on the floor next to her and told her to leave before he called the sheriff. Now here they were. Lost somewhere in Wyoming territory, caught in a blizzard that had come howling out of nowhere, and Clara knew the truth even if she couldn't say it. They were going to die out here. Her foot caught on something buried in the snow. She went down hard, losing her grip on Lily. The child tumbled into a drift and didn't move. "Lily!" Clara scrambled toward her daughter on hands and knees. "Lily, wake up!" The girl's eyes fluttered open. So pale. Her lips were turning blue. "Mama, I'm sorry I'm heavy." Clara's heart shattered. "You're not heavy, baby. You're perfect. Mama's just tired." She pulled Lily close, wrapping her thin shawl around them both. It wasn't enough. Nothing was enough. The wind cut through the fabric like it wasn't there, stealing whatever warmth remained in their bodies. Clara had stopped shivering an hour ago. She remembered what that meant from the war winters. When men stopped shaking, they stopped breathing soon after. "Lily, I need you to stay awake. Can you do that for Mama?" "I'll try." But her eyes were closing. Clara pressed her lips to her daughter's forehead and felt how cold the skin was. Cold as death. She thought about praying, but the words wouldn't come. God had stopped listening somewhere between Philadelphia and here. Or maybe he'd never been listening at all. "I'm sorry," she whispered to Lily. "I'm so sorry I couldn't keep you safe." She closed her eyes and pulled her daughter closer. Maybe if she held tight enough, they'd slip away together. Maybe that was mercy, dying with the person you loved most instead of watching them go first. The wind screamed. The snow fell. The world disappeared into white nothing. Then, through the howling storm, a sound, slow, steady, deliberate. Hooves. Clara's eyes snapped open. Her heart, barely beating, suddenly slammed against her ribs. She strained to hear, terrified she'd imagined it. A dying brain playing tricks. But no. There it was again. The measured clop of a horse moving through snow. Leather creaking. Metal jingling. Someone was out there. Someone was riding through this hell. "Lily?" Clara shook her daughter gently. "Lily, wake up. Someone's coming." Hope and terror fought for control of her chest. It could be help, a rancher, a traveler, someone with food and warmth. Or it could be worse. It could be Marcus. Her brother-in-law had sworn to find her, sworn to take Lily no matter how far Clara ran. He had money and connections and the kind of vindictive patience that never quit. What if he'd tracked them this far? What if he'd ridden through the blizzard specifically to catch them at their weakest? Clara's hand moved to the small knife in her boot. A pathetic weapon barely more than a kitchen blade, but it was all she had. "If this is Marcus," she whispered to Lily's unconscious form, "I'll fight. God help me, I'll fight until my last breath." The hoofbeats stopped. Clara's breath caught. Whoever it was had reached them. She heard the horse snorting, stamping. Footsteps in the snow. Coming closer. She pulled Lily behind her and rose to her knees, knife held low. Rain and wind battered her face. She knew she must look like a ghost. Pale, gaunt, half wild, but she didn't care. A shadow appeared through the white curtain of snow. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving, careful, with hands visible. Then he stepped into view. Not Marcus. The man was older, maybe late 30s, with weather-worn features and eyes that had seen too much sun and not enough comfort. He wore a wide-brimmed hat pulled low against the storm, a long oilskin coat that gleamed with ice, and boots caked in frozen mud. But it was his eyes that caught Clara. Steady, measuring, not unkind. The eyes of a man who'd learned to assess situations quick and act accordingly. He looked at her, at the knife, at Lily's small form behind her. Something shifted in his face, not pity, something deeper. Recognition maybe of suffering he understood. He raised both hands slowly, palms out. "Easy now, ma'am. I ain't here to hurt you." Clara didn't lower the knife. "Then what are you here for?" "Saw your wagon yesterday, broken on the ridge about 3 miles east. Figured someone might still be nearby." He glanced at the storm swirling around them. "Didn't expect to find anyone alive in this mess, though." "We had no choice." He studied her for a long moment. She could see him taking in the details, her hollow cheeks, her shaking hands, the way her dress hung loose from lost weight. "The child," he said quietly. "She alive?" Clara's grip on the knife tightened. "Yes." "She don't look good." "She's fine." "Ma'am?" His voice was gentle but firm. "I've been through enough winters to know what frostbite looks like. That girl needs to be somewhere warm, and she needs it now. And I suppose you're offering—" "I am." Clara laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "Just like that, you find a stranger in a snowstorm and offer to take her home. Just like that. Why?" He was quiet. The wind howled around them. Then he reached slowly into his coat, and Clara tensed her knife coming up. But what he pulled out wasn't a weapon. It was a bundle wrapped in oilcloth, small, about the size of 2 fists. He stepped closer, then knelt in the snow, bringing himself to her eye level. Even on his knees, he was nearly as tall as she was standing. "Got some bread here," he said, unwrapping the bundle. "Not much and hard as rock, but it's food." Clara stared at the bread, dark, rough-hewn, the kind made with more grit than flour. Her stomach cramped so hard it doubled her over. "How much?" she whispered. "How much what? How much do you want for it?" His eyes softened. Something that might have been sorrow crossed his face. "Nothing. It's yours." He held it out. "You and that girl look half dead already. I ain't about to charge you for staying alive." Clara's vision blurred. She told herself it was just the snow, but she knew better. "We haven't eaten," she heard herself say, the words breaking free. "Not in 5 days. We have nothing. No money, no supplies, nothing to offer." "I know." His voice was quiet. "I can see that. Take the bread." He held it close enough that she could reach without coming near him, giving her the choice, letting her keep her distance. Slowly, Clara lowered the knife. Her hand shook as she reached out. The bread was heavier than it looked. Dense. Substantial. Real. "Lily." She broke off a piece. "Lily, sweetheart, wake up. You need to eat." Her daughter stirred weakly, eyes fluttered open. "Mama?" "Here, baby. Slow bites. Chew it good." She pressed the bread into Lily's small hands and watched her daughter take a bite. The sound Lily made, something between a sob and a moan, broke Clara's heart all over again. She took a bite of her own piece. The taste exploded across her tongue. grain salt and something wonderful that might have just been sustenance itself. When she looked up, the stranger was still kneeling, watching them with an expression she couldn't read. "Thank you," she managed. I can't." "Name's Sawyer Hartley," he said. "I run a cattle ranch about 10 miles northeast. Small operation, nothing fancy. But it's got walls that don't leak and a stove that works." "You're offering us shelter." "I'm offering you a chance to get that child somewhere she won't freeze to death." He stood brushing snow from his knees. "Rest is up to you." Clara looked at Lily, still clutching her bread, still so pale and cold. "Why?" The question came out sharper than she intended. "Why would you help us? You don't know anything about us. We could be criminals. We could be—" "Ma'am." He cut her off, but not unkindly. "I don't need to know your story to see you're in trouble, and I don't need a reason to help beyond the fact that you need it." "Everyone needs a reason." "Then here's mine." He met her eyes, and something old and painful flickered in his gaze. 10 years ago, I came home from the war and found my house empty. My wife died while I was gone, her and the baby she was carrying. There wasn't nobody to help her. Nobody to bring water or medicine, or even hold her hand while she suffered. He looked away, jaw tight. "I can't fix that. Can't undo it. But I can make sure it don't happen to someone else's wife and daughter. Not if I can prevent it." Clara felt something crack open in her chest. "I'm not anyone's wife," she said quietly. "Not anymore." "Widow?" "Yes." Sawyer nodded slowly. "Running from something?" The question hung in the frozen air between them. Clara thought about lying, about protecting herself with silence and misdirection like she'd been doing for months. But something in his steady gaze made her tell the truth. "Running from someone, my husband's brother. He wants my daughter, or rather, he wants her inheritance. He's got lawyers and legal papers and money for bribes." Her voice hardened. "I won't let him have her. I'll die first." "Reckon you almost did." "I'll do it again if I have to." Sawyer studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once, decisive. "All right then. Let's get you both somewhere warm before we got to test that promise." He moved to his horse, a tall roan gelding standing patient in the storm, and pulled down a bedroll and another piece of oilcloth. "Can you ride?" "I grew up in Philadelphia. Horses were for pulling carriages." "Then I'll walk. You and the girl take the saddle." He lifted Lily first, settling her gently like she weighed nothing. Then he offered Clara his hand. She hesitated. This was the moment. Trust or don't. Accept help or keep running alone until the running killed them both. Lily coughed weakly, the wet, rattling sound of lungs filling with fluid. Clara took Sawyer's hand. His palm was rough with calluses, his grip strong and sure. He helped her up behind Lily, arranged the oilcloth over them both. "Hold tight to her," he said. "I'll go slow. We'll be there in a couple hours." He took up the reins and started walking, leading them through the white hell of the storm. Clara wrapped her arm around Lily's small body and held on. The horse's steady movement should have been soothing, but her mind wouldn't quiet. She'd accepted help from a stranger. A man. After everything she'd been through, after every man who'd looked at her with greed or cruelty or cold indifference, she'd put her daughter's life in the hands of someone she didn't know. It was either the bravest thing she'd ever done or the most foolish. "Mama." Lily's voice was thin, reedy. "Yes, baby. Is the man going to hurt us?" Clara looked at Sawyer's broad back, at the way he leaned into the wind without complaint, at the careful way he led the horse around obstacles she couldn't even see. "No, sweetheart," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "I don't think he is." The journey blurred together, snow and wind and cold, and the eternal rhythm of the horse's hooves. Clara drifted in and out of consciousness, only Lily's weight against her chest keeping her anchored. Then lights. A building taking shape through the storm. A house. A barn. Smoke rising from a chimney. "Almost there," Sawyer called back. Hold on just a little longer. He led them to a porch, then helped Clara down. Her legs buckled, she hadn't realized how weak she'd become, but he caught her, steadied her. I got you, he said. I got you both. He lifted Lily into his arms and carried her inside. The warmth hit Clara like a physical force. She staggered through the door and nearly wept at the simple miracle of heat of walls blocking the wind of a fire crackling in a black iron stove. Sawyer laid Lily on a bed in a small room, then stepped back to let Clara take over. She stripped off her daughter's frozen clothes with numb fingers, wrapped her in thick wool blankets that smelled like soap and sun. There's shirts in that drawer, Sawyer said from the doorway. They'll be too big, but they're warm. You should change too. You're soaked through. Clara found the shirts, men's work shirts, flannel soft from many washings. She dressed Lily first, then herself, the fabric hanging to her knees like a dress. When she came out of the bedroom, Sawyer was stoking the fire, building it higher. Coffee's on, he said without turning. Should be ready soon. Clara stood there in a dead man's wife's house, wearing a stranger's clothes, watching this quiet man tend a fire like it was the most natural thing in the world. I don't understand you, she said. He glanced back. Not much to understand. You pulled us out of that storm. You're giving us food and shelter. You don't even know my name. Then tell me. Clara. Clara Whitmore. My daughter is Lily. Clara. He tested the name, nodded. Pretty. Mr. Hartley. Sawyer. Sawyer. She swallowed. I need you to understand something. The man I'm running from, he's dangerous. He has money and connections. If he finds out where I am, he'll come here. He'll bring trouble to your door. Sawyer straightened from the fire, turned to face her full on. Let me ask you something, Clara. This man, he got a legal claim on your daughter. He has papers, guardianship documents signed by a judge in Philadelphia. He claims I'm unfit, claims a woman alone can't provide for a child properly. That what you believe? No. Then it don't matter what his papers say. Sawyer's voice was flat, certain. You're that girl's mama. Anyone with eyes can see how much you love her. Papers don't trump that. Clara felt tears burn her eyes. The law doesn't agree with you. The law's different out here than it is back east. Man's word carries weight, and the word of his neighbors carries more. He poured 2 cups of coffee, pressed one into her hands. You rest tonight. Get warm. Feed that child. Tomorrow we'll talk about what comes next. What comes next? He met her eyes. In the firelight, she could see the silver threading through his dark hair, the old grief carved into the lines of his face. Whatever you need it to be, he said. But Clara, you ain't alone anymore. Understand, whatever's hunting you, you don't have to face it alone. Clara wrapped her hands around the hot cup and felt warmth seep into her frozen fingers. She wanted to argue, to maintain the walls she'd built, to refuse this kindness before it could turn into something that hurt them. But she was so tired, so desperately bone-deep tired of being strong every single moment. All right, she whispered. All right. They drank their coffee in silence, while the storm raged outside and the fire crackled warm and steady. And for the first time in months, Clara let herself believe just for this one night that maybe they'd finally found a place to rest. Clara woke to silence. No wind howling, no snow battering against canvas, no cold seeping into her bones. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. The softness beneath her, the warmth surrounding her, the smell of coffee and wood smoke, none of it made sense. Then memory crashed back. The storm. The stranger. Sawyer Hartley. She sat up fast, heart lurching. Lily. Right here, Mama. The small voice came from across the room. Clara's eyes found her daughter curled in a wooden rocking chair, far too big for her, wrapped in a quilt, holding a cup of something steaming. Mr. Sawyer made me honey water, Lily said. He said it would help my chest. Clara pressed a hand to her heart, feeling her pulse slow. Sunlight streamed through the window. Actual sunlight. The storm had passed. How do you feel, sweetheart? Better. Lily coughed, but it was softer now. Less of that terrible wet rattle. My throat still hurts, but Mr. Sawyer said that's normal. He said his horse got sick once and Honey helped her too. Clara almost smiled. He compared you to a horse. I don't mind. I like horses. The door to the main room was cracked open, and Clara could hear movement beyond it. The clink of metal, the scrape of a chair, the quiet sounds of someone going about their morning. She looked down at herself. Still wearing Sawyer's flannel shirt, the sleeves rolled up 3 times to free her hands. Her dress from yesterday hung over a chair by the window, stiff with dried mud, but no longer frozen. Lily, stay here. I'm going to talk to Mr. Sawyer. Can I come? Not yet, baby. You need to rest. Clara found her boots by the door. Someone had cleaned them and set them near the stove to dry. She pulled them on and stepped into the main room. Sawyer sat at the scarred wooden table, a cup of coffee in front of him, studying what looked like a ledger book. He'd changed into clean clothes, faded blue work shirt, canvas trousers, leather suspenders. His hair was damp, like he'd washed at the pump outside. He looked up when she entered. Morning. Coffee's still hot. Thank you. Clara poured herself a cup, trying to gather her thoughts. You let us sleep late. You needed it. You should have woken me. I could have helped with what? He closed the ledger. Ain't nothing needs doing that I couldn't handle myself. You and that girl needed rest more than I needed help. Clara sat across from him, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. In the daylight, she could see more details of the house. Simple but clean. Functional furniture handmade by the look of it. No curtains, no decorations, no woman's touch anywhere. Except one thing. A photograph in a simple frame on the mantel. Clara hadn't noticed it last night in the dark and chaos. Now she could see it clearly. A younger Sawyer standing beside a woman with kind eyes and dark hair. His wife. The one who'd died. Sawyer followed her gaze but said nothing. She was beautiful, Clara offered quietly. She was. How long has it been? 10 years, 3 months, 12 days. He said it flat factual, like he'd counted every one. Rachel was her name. She'd have liked you, I think. She had a soft spot for people who didn't know when to quit. Clara didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the fire crackling and the distant call of birds outside. Then Sawyer leaned back in his chair and fixed her with that steady gaze. I rode out early this morning, checked on your wagon. Clara tensed. And axles snapped clean through, wheels shattered. Even if I could repair it, your horse is gone. He paused. I'm sorry. I know that's hard news. Belle was old. She deserved better than dying in a blizzard. She didn't die in the blizzard. Clara looked away. No. That took courage. Mercy killing ain't easy even when it's right. It wasn't courage. It was necessity. Sometimes they're the same thing. Lily's cough echoed from the bedroom and Clara half rose from her chair. She's all right, Sawyer said. That cough's gonna linger a few days, but she's past the worst of it. I've seen enough sick animals and sick people to know the difference between getting better and getting worse. She's getting better. Clara sank back down. You've been very kind to us. I don't know how to repay. I don't want payment. Everyone wants something. Sawyer's jaw tightened. That what your experience has taught you? Yes. Then your experience has been with the wrong kind of people. He stood moving to refill his coffee. I helped you because you needed help. That's the end of it. It can't be the end of it. Clara's voice came out sharper than she intended. We can't stay here forever. We have no money, no transportation, no way to get to California. California. My husband's cousin lives in Fresno. She wrote after Edward died, said if I ever needed help I could come there. It's far enough that Marcus won't think to look. Sawyer turned, leaning against the counter. This Marcus, your husband's brother, tell me about him. Clara hesitated, but she'd already told him some of it. What did the rest matter now? Edward was a bank clerk in Philadelphia. He died of consumption 2 years ago. We weren't rich, but he had a life insurance policy and a small inheritance from his father. Everything was supposed to go into a trust for Lily. But Marcus showed up at the funeral with a lawyer and papers claiming guardianship. He said I was unfit, that a woman alone couldn't provide for a child properly. He had a judge in his pocket, witnesses willing to say whatever he paid them to say. And the money. If Marcus becomes Lily's guardian, he controls her trust until she's 18, which means he controls everything. Clara's hands tightened on her cup. I've known Marcus for years. He drinks, he gambles, he has debts to dangerous people. He doesn't want Lily, he wants what she represents. And once he has legal control, there's nothing to stop him from draining every penny. So you ran. I took Lily, and I ran. We've been moving ever since. Different names, different towns, never staying anywhere long enough for him to catch up. Her voice cracked. I thought we were far enough. I thought if we could just make it to California. How long has it been? 8 months. Sawyer let out a low whistle. 8 months on the run with a 5-year-old. That's something. It's not enough. Marcus is relentless. He'll keep looking. He'll never stop until he finds us. And when he does, then I'll run again. I'll keep running until Lily's old enough that no court can take her from me. Clara met his eyes. Or until I can't run anymore. Sawyer was quiet for a long moment. He moved back to the table, sat down across from her again. There might be another way. What do you mean? The law's different out here, Clara. Texas, Wyoming, these territories, they don't bow and scrape to Eastern courts the way you might think. A man's word carries weight, his reputation, his standing in the community. And if a woman has a husband, her position is even stronger. Clara's heart started beating faster. I don't have a husband. You could. The words hung in the air between them. Are you? Clara couldn't finish the sentence. I'm proposing a legal arrangement. Sawyer's voice was careful, measured. Marriage on paper makes you a married woman with a husband who has land, reputation, and friends in this county. Makes Lily my legal daughter if I adopt her proper. Those guardianship papers from Philadelphia, they become worthless. Marcus would have to fight me in a Texas court, and I've got resources he don't know about. Clara stared at him. Her mind was racing, trying to process what he was offering. You don't know me. I know enough. You know nothing. I could be lying about everything. I could be a criminal, a thief, Are you? No, but then I know what I need to know. Sawyer leaned forward. You're a mother who'd die for her child. You've survived 8 months of running on nothing but determination and grit. And when I found you in that storm, you were holding a knife and ready to fight even though you could barely stand. That's everything. His voice was firm now. Clara, I've been alone for 10 years. This house, this land, it's all I've got. And I've built something worth having. But what's the point of building something if there's no one to share it with? No one to leave it to? You want an heir. I want a family. I wanted one with Rachel, and I lost that chance. Now I'm offering you protection, stability, a home. And in return... He paused. In return, I get to not be alone anymore. Clara's throat was tight. What about... would you expect... I expect nothing except what you're willing to give. Sawyer's eyes were steady. You'd have your own space, your own room if you want it. I wouldn't presume on any rights that marriage might give me. This would be a partnership, a legal protection. Nothing more unless you wanted it to be. Why? Clara's voice cracked. Why would you do this for strangers? Sawyer looked at the photograph on the mantel. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Because Rachel died alone. Because I wasn't there when she needed me. Because I've spent 10 years trying to make peace with that and never quite managing. He looked back at Clara. Maybe this is my chance. To save someone I couldn't save before. To be there when it matters. Clara felt tears burn her eyes. It was too much. Too generous. Too dangerous for him. Marcus will make trouble for you. If he finds out, let him try. There was steel in Sawyer's voice now. I didn't survive 4 years of war by being easy to push around, and I didn't build this ranch by backing down from fights. You don't understand what he's like. I understand exactly what he's like. I've known men like him my whole life. Bullies with money who think they can take whatever they want because no one's ever stood up to them. Sawyer's jaw hardened. He ain't met me yet. Clara's mind was spinning. Everything she'd been taught said this was madness. You didn't marry strangers. You didn't trust men who offered too much for too little. You didn't believe in fairy tales where cowboys rode in and saved the day. But Lily was in the next room, still coughing, still weak. 8 months of running had nearly killed them both. And California was still weeks away, weeks they might not survive. I need to think, she said finally. Take all the time you need. Sawyer stood. I've got work to do in the barn. You and Lily stay warm. There's bread in the tin and preserves in the cold box if you're hungry. He grabbed his hat from a hook by the door, settled it on his head. Sawyer. He turned. If I said no, if I decided to leave as soon as Lily's well enough to travel, would you let us go? Yes. No arguments? No trying to convince me? You're not a prisoner, Clara. You're a guest. If you want to leave, you leave. No questions asked. He opened the door. But I hope you'll at least consider it. Not for my sake, for Lily's. That girl deserves better than spending her childhood running. The door closed behind him. Clara sat alone at the table for a long time, staring at her cold coffee and trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. Marriage. To a stranger. For protection. It was insane. It was desperate. It was exactly the kind of reckless decision that had gotten her into trouble before, but it was also a chance. The first real chance she'd had in 8 months. Mama! Lily stood in the bedroom doorway, the quilt wrapped around her shoulders like a cape. What is it, sweetheart? I'm hungry. Clara pushed aside her racing thoughts and went to her daughter. Let's find you something to eat. She fixed Lily a plate bread and preserves, as Sawyer had said, and sat with her while she ate. The child's appetite was good, better than it had been in weeks. Color was returning to her cheeks. I like it here, Lily said between bites. It's warm. It is warm. Mr. Sawyer is nice. He seems to be. Is he going to be our friend? Clara smoothed her daughter's tangled hair. I don't know, baby. We'll see. I hope he is. Lily looked up with those big brown eyes. I'm tired of running, Mama. I want to stay somewhere. The words hit Clara like a blow. 5 years old and already tired of running. Already craving stability and safety and a place to call home. What kind of life was that for a child? Eat your breakfast, Clara said softly. We'll talk about it later. The day passed slowly. Lily napped and Clara found herself moving through the house, learning its rhythms. She washed dishes in the basin by the window. She swept the floor. She heated water and helped Lily bathe, washing the child's hair until it shone. Small things, domestic things. The kind of things she'd done in another life before Edward died and everything fell apart. When Sawyer came in for lunch, she had food waiting. Nothing fancy, just heated beans and more bread, but he looked surprised and pleased. Didn't expect this. I'm not going to sit idle while you're working. He nodded, something like respect in his eyes. Fair enough. They ate in silence that was almost comfortable. When he'd finished, Sawyer pushed back from the table. I need to ride to town this afternoon, check on some supplies I ordered and pick up the mail. Is it far? About an hour each way. I should be back before dark. Clara hesitated. Would you check if anyone's been asking questions about a woman traveling with a child? Sawyer's expression didn't change. I will. Lock the door while I'm gone. Don't answer for anyone you don't know. After he left, Clara stood at the window and watched him ride away until he disappeared over the horizon. Then she checked the lock, and checked it again. Old habits. The afternoon stretched long. Lily played with her rag doll Rosie, she called it, made by Clara's mother before she died, and chattered about the horses she'd seen in the barn, and the cat she hoped lived there, and whether Mr. Sawyer had any books she could look at. I don't know, sweetheart. We'll have to ask. When is he coming back? Before dark. I miss him. Clara looked at her daughter sharply. You just met him. I know, but he's nice. He talks to me like I'm a real person, not just a baby. That gave Clara pause. She thought about all the men they'd encountered in 8 months of running. The ones who ignored Lily entirely. The ones who looked at Clara with predatory eyes. The ones who offered help with strings attached that she'd learned to recognize and flee. Sawyer hadn't looked at her like that, not once. "He is nice," Clara admitted. "But Lily, we need to be careful. We don't know him very well yet." "I know." Lily's voice was too old for her years. "We have to be careful about everyone." The sun was setting when Clara heard hooves approaching. She tensed automatically, then forced herself to relax when she recognized Sawyer's roan through the window. He came in with a satchel over one shoulder and a newspaper tucked under his arm. His face was neutral, but she'd learned enough to read the slight tension in his shoulders. "Well?" "No one's asking about you. At least not yet." He set the satchel on the table. "But there was a man on the stage from Cheyenne this morning. City clothes, fancy boots. He was asking about available rooms at the boarding house." Clara's heart stopped. "Did you see him?" "Only from a distance. Didn't want to get too close and attract attention." "What did he look like?" "Tall, dark hair, dressed like money." Sawyer's eyes met hers. "Mean something to you?" Clara sank into a chair. Her hands were shaking. "It could be him. It could be Marcus. Could be anyone. But it could be him." Sawyer didn't argue. He pulled off his hat, hung it on the hook by the door. "You make that decision yet." Clara looked at him. At this man she'd known for less than 2 days, who was offering her everything she needed. "If I say yes," she said slowly, "when could it happen?" "I know the pastor in town. Good man doesn't ask questions. If we rode in tomorrow morning, we could be married by noon." "That fast." "This is Wyoming, Clara. People don't wait around for things to happen, they make them happen." Clara thought about the man at the boarding house, about Marcus's face, the last time she'd seen him twisted with rage as she fled Philadelphia with Lily in her arms. About 8 months of running and hiding and never feeling safe. She thought about Lily, who wanted to stay somewhere, who wanted a friend, who was tired of being scared. "All right," she heard herself say. "Yes." Something shifted in Sawyer's expression. Not quite relief, something more complicated than that. "You're sure?" "I'm not sure of anything anymore, but I'm sure that I can't keep running forever, and I'm sure that my daughter deserves better than the life I've been giving her." Clara stood squaring her shoulders. "If marrying you protects her, then that's what I'll do." Sawyer nodded slowly. "We leave at dawn. The pastor holds services early, but he'll make time for us." "What do I need to do?" "Just be ready. I'll handle the rest." He moved to the stove to start supper, and Clara watched him, this stranger, who was about to become her husband. "Sawyer." He turned. "Thank you, for all of it. Even if this turns out to be a mistake, thank you for trying to help us." "It's not a mistake." His voice was quiet, but certain. "Whatever else happens, Clara, I promise you that." She wanted to believe him. God help her, she wanted to so badly. "I'll tell Lily," she said. "She should know what's happening." "Wait." Sawyer crossed the room, stopped in front of her. "Before you do, I need to ask you something." "What?" "Do you want this? Not just for Lily, not just for protection, but for yourself. Do you want a chance at a real life here? Because if this is just desperation talking, if you're gonna spend our whole marriage looking for the first chance to run again, then we shouldn't do it." Clara met his eyes. The question deserved honesty. "I don't know what I want anymore. I've spent so long just trying to survive that I've forgotten what it feels like to plan for the future." She took a breath. "But I know I want Lily to be safe. I know I want her to grow up without fear. And I know that when I look at you, I don't feel afraid. That's more than I've been able to say about any man in a long time." Sawyer held her gaze for a long moment. "That's enough," he said finally. "We'll build from there." He went back to the stove, and Clara went to tell her daughter that everything was about to change. Lily listened to the news with wide eyes. "You're going to marry Mr. Sawyer?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Does that mean he'll be my papa?" Clara's throat tightened. It means he'll be your legal father. He'll protect us and take care of us, and we'll live here with him. But what about my real papa? The one in heaven. You can have two papas, baby. One in heaven watching over you, and one here keeping you safe. Lily considered this with the seriousness only a child could bring to such a question. Will Mr. Sawyer love me? I think. Clara paused, remembering the gentle way Sawyer had lifted Lily from the snow, the way he'd made her honey water and compared her to his sick horse. I think he already does in his way. Will you love him? The question caught Clara off guard. Love. She hadn't thought about love in so long. After Edward, she'd locked that part of herself away, focused only on survival and protecting Lily. I don't know, she admitted. But I'll try to be a good wife to him. I'll try to make this work. Good, Lily nodded firmly. Because I like him. I want him to be my papa. Clara hugged her daughter tight, breathing in the smell of her hair, feeling the small heart beating against her own. Then that's what he'll be. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in the bed that would soon be hers, permanently staring at the ceiling, and trying to imagine what her life would look like in a week, a month, a year. Married to a stranger, living on a ranch in Wyoming, building a life from nothing but hope and desperation. A soft knock at the door made her sit up. Clara, you awake? Sawyer's voice low through the wood. Yes. The door cracked open. He stood silhouetted in the lamplight from the main room. Can't sleep either. No. Figured. He hesitated. Mind if I come in, just to talk? All right. He entered, staying by the door, keeping a respectful distance. Having second thoughts. 1,000 of them. That's fair. He was quiet a moment. I want you to know if the man in town is Marcus, if he's found you somehow, I won't let him take Lily. Marriage or no marriage. I won't stand by and watch that happen. Why? Clara's voice came out rough. Why do you care so much about strangers? Sawyer leaned against the wall, his face half in shadow. Because I've been alone for a long time, Clara. And alone makes you hard. It makes you forget what matters. Then I found you and Lily in that storm, and something woke up in me that I thought was dead. He paused. I'm not going to pretend this is some fairy tale. I don't know you well enough to love you yet. But I know I want to try. I know I want to be the kind of man who helps instead of walks away. And I know that little girl in there deserves a chance at a real childhood. Clara felt tears sting her eyes. I'm scared. I know. I've been making decisions for 8 months, and every single one of them has felt like life or death. Now I'm making the biggest decision of all, and I can't tell if I'm being brave or just stupid. Sawyer pushed off the wall and crossed the room. He stopped in front of her close enough that she could see the sincerity in his eyes. Maybe it's both, he said quietly. Maybe brave and stupid are the same thing when you got nothing left to lose. Clara laughed despite herself, a wet, broken sound. That might be the most honest thing anyone's ever said to me. I ain't got much use for dishonesty. Sawyer reached out, hesitated, then gently touched her hand. We'll figure this out, Clara. Together. That's the whole point. His hand was warm and rough and real. Clara turned her palm up, let her fingers thread through his. Together, she repeated. They stayed like that for a long moment, two strangers on the edge of becoming something more. Then Sawyer squeezed her hand and stepped back. Get some sleep. We leave at dawn. He was at the door when Clara spoke again. Sawyer. He turned. I'll try, she said. I don't know if I can love you. I don't know if I can love anyone anymore, but I'll try. Something shifted in his face. Not quite a smile, but something close to it. That's all I'm asking. The door closed behind him. Clara lay back down, staring at the ceiling again. But this time, somewhere beneath the fear and uncertainty, there was something else. Hope. Small and fragile and dangerous, but there. She closed her eyes and held onto it, and eventually, finally, she slept. Dawn came cold and gray. Clara dressed in her own clothes, now clean and mended where Sawyer had somehow found time to stitch the torn hem. She braided her hair and pinned it up, then helped Lily into her warmest dress. "Do I look pretty, Mama?" "You look beautiful, sweetheart." "Is this a real wedding, like in the stories?" Clara knelt to button Lily's coat. "It's a real wedding, but it might not be like the stories. There won't be flowers or music or a fancy dress." "That's okay." Lily touched Clara's cheek with small fingers. "You're still pretty without a fancy dress." Clara had to look away to hide the tears. Sawyer was waiting by the door when they emerged, dressed in what must have been his best clothes. A dark coat she hadn't seen before, a clean white shirt, boots polished to a shine. He'd shaved, and without the stubble, he looked younger, almost nervous. "You ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be." They rode to town in Sawyer's wagon, Lily tucked between them on the bench seat. The child chattered the whole way about the horses, about the snow, about what kind of cake they'd have at the wedding, and Clara let the sound wash over her like water. The town was small, just a main street, with a general store, a saloon, a blacksmith, and a white-steepled church at the far end. A few people moved about their morning business, and Clara felt their eyes on the wagon as it passed. "Folks are curious," Sawyer said quietly. "Small town. Everyone knows everyone else's business." "Will that be a problem?" "Shouldn't be. Most people here mind their own affairs." He pulled the wagon up in front of the church. "Pastor Williams is expecting us. I sent word yesterday." Clara's hands were shaking as Sawyer helped her down. This was really happening. In less than an hour she'd be married again. To a man she'd known for 3 days. "Mama, look!" Lily was pointing at the church door, where an older couple stood waiting. The woman was short and round with gray hair, pulled back in a sensible bun. The man was tall and weathered with the look of a farmer. "Henry and Margaret Dawson," Sawyer said. "Neighbors from the ranch east of mine. I asked them to be witnesses." Margaret bustled forward, her face warm with welcome. "So, this is the young lady Sawyer's been hiding away." She took Clara's hands in her own. "Don't you worry, dear. Everything's going to be just fine. Sawyer Hartley's the best man in this county, and that's not flattery, it's plain fact." "Thank you," Clara managed. "And who's this little one?" Margaret crouched down to Lily's level. "Aren't you just the prettiest thing?" "I'm Lily. I'm going to have a new papa today." Margaret's eyes softened. "Yes, you are, and a fine papa he'll be." Henry Dawson shook Sawyer's hand, clapping him on the shoulder. "About time you stopped rattling around in that house alone. Rachel would approve, you know. She always hated seeing you lonely." Something flickered in Sawyer's eyes. "I know." They entered the church together. It was small and plain with wooden pews and a simple altar. Pastor Williams waited at the front, a kind-faced man with white hair and spectacles perched on his nose. "Mr. Hartley, and this must be your bride." "Clara Whitmore," Sawyer said, "and her daughter Lily." The pastor smiled at them both. "Shall we begin?" It happened fast, faster than Clara expected. The pastor spoke the familiar words, "Do you take this man? Do you take this woman?" And Clara heard herself saying, "I do," like someone else was speaking with her voice. Sawyer's hand was warm and steady when he slipped a simple gold band onto her finger. "It was my mother's," he said quietly. "Only thing of value I got left from before the war." Then the pastor pronounced them man and wife, and Sawyer looked at Clara with a question in his eyes. She nodded. He leaned forward and pressed a kiss to her forehead. Gentle, respectful, a promise rather than a demand. "Well," Margaret said, dabbing at her eyes, "isn't that just lovely?" They signed the register, and just like that, Clara was Mrs. Sawyer Hartley. "There's one more piece of business," Sawyer said, pulling another document from his coat. "The adoption papers. If you're willing, Clara, I'd like to make this official." Clara looked at the paper, a formal declaration of adoption, making Lily legally Sawyer's daughter. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." She signed. Sawyer signed. Pastor Williams notarized the document with his official seal. "Congratulations, Mr. Hartley," the pastor said. "You're officially a father." Sawyer knelt down in front of Lily. You know what this means. You're my papa now. If you want me to be. Lily threw her arms around his neck. I want you to be. I want it more than anything. Clara watched Sawyer's face as he held her daughter, saw him close his eyes against the shine of tears, saw something broken in him beginning to heal. They left the church as a family. The ride back to the ranch was different. Something had shifted in the air between them, not quite comfort yet, but the beginning of it. Lily fell asleep against Sawyer's shoulder, exhausted from the excitement, and Clara found herself watching them together. You're good with her, she said quietly. She makes it easy. Not everyone would say that. Not everyone wants a stranger's child. Sawyer's arm tightened around Lily's sleeping form. She's not a stranger anymore. She's my daughter. And anyone who says different can take it up with me. They were halfway home when Clara saw the rider. A single figure on horseback, coming from the direction of town, moving fast. Sawyer. He followed her gaze and his jaw tightened. Take Lily, he said, transferring the sleeping child to Clara's arms. Get under the blanket in the back, stay down and stay quiet. Is it? I don't know yet. Just do as I say. Clara climbed into the wagon bed, pulling a heavy blanket over herself and Lily. The child stirred but didn't wake. Through a gap in the fabric, Clara watched as the rider approached. Her heart was hammering so loud she was sure it could be heard across the prairie. The rider pulled up alongside the wagon. Mr. Hartley. Not Marcus's voice. Clara released a breath she didn't know she was holding. Sheriff Cole. Sawyer's voice was steady. Something wrong. Might be. There's a man in town asking questions. City fellow came in on yesterday's stage. He's been going around to all the shops showing a photograph, asking if anyone's seen a woman traveling with a young girl. Clara's blood turned to ice. What did folks tell him? Nothing yet, but he's offering money and money talks. The sheriff paused. Sawyer, is there something I should know? Just got married this morning, Thomas. Clara Whitmore. Clara Hartley now. She's been through some trouble back east. This man you're describing might be part of that trouble. What kind of trouble? The kind that involves custody disputes and corrupt judges. Sawyer's voice hardened. He's got no legal standing here. I've got marriage papers, adoption papers, everything filed proper. Whatever claims he thinks he has, they don't mean spit in Wyoming. The sheriff was quiet a moment. You sure about this, Sawyer, taking on someone else's fight? It's my fight now, Thomas. Clara's my wife. Lily's my daughter. Anyone who comes for them comes through me. Another pause. Then, all right, I'll keep an eye on this city fellow, let you know if he makes any moves. But Sawyer, be careful. Man's got a look about him. The kind of look that says he's used to getting what he wants. So am I. The sheriff rode off, and Clara pushed back the blanket, clutching Lily against her chest. He found us. Sounds like it. I have to run. I have to take Lily and... You're not running. Sawyer turned to face her, his eyes fierce. You hear me, Clara? You're not running anymore. We're married now, legal and binding. He can't touch you. You don't know Marcus. He'll find a way. He always finds a way. Then let him try. Sawyer's jaw was set. But he won't find a desperate woman alone with a child. He'll find a wife, a mother, and a husband who'll die before he lets anyone take his family. Clara stared at him. This man she'd married hours ago. You mean that? Every word. Lily stirred in Clara's arms, waking slowly. Mama, what's wrong? Nothing, sweetheart. Go back to sleep. But Lily's eyes were already opening, taking in Clara's pale face, Sawyer's grim expression. Is the bad man coming? Clara's heart broke. 5 years old, and already she knew to ask that question. I don't know, baby, but Papa Sawyer is going to keep us safe. Right, Sawyer? Sawyer reached back and squeezed Lily's hand. That's right, little one. Nobody's gonna hurt you, not while I'm here. They made it back to the ranch without incident, but the tension hung heavy in the air. Sawyer unhitched the horses with quick, efficient movements, then did a circuit of the property checking sight lines and entry points. "What are you doing?" Clara asked, watching from the porch. "Making sure I know where trouble might come from." He came back to her, his face serious. "Clara, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "What?" "Is Marcus the type to come alone, or will he bring help?" Clara thought about her brother-in-law, about the men he'd associated with in Philadelphia, the gamblers, the debt collectors, the kind of people who solved problems with violence. "He might bring someone. He's not a fighter himself, but he knows people who are." Sawyer nodded slowly. "All right, I'm gonna ride over to the Dawsons' place, let Henry know what's happening. If things go bad, I want someone who can come quick." "You're leaving us." "Only for an hour. You'll be safe here, doors locked, rifle loaded." He took her hands. "Clara, can you shoot?" "I've never fired a gun in my life." "Then we'll fix that soon as I get back. But for now, you don't need to be accurate. You just need to make noise. Anyone comes through that door uninvited, you point and pull the trigger. Understand?" Clara nodded, her throat tight. Sawyer showed her where the rifle was, how to hold it, how to release the safety. His hands were steady on hers, his voice calm and patient. "You can do this." "I don't know if I can." "You can. You've been doing impossible things for 8 months. This is just one more." He kissed her forehead again, that same gentle, respectful kiss from the church, and then he was gone. Clara locked the door behind him, checked every window, settled Lily in the bedroom with her doll and strict instructions to stay quiet. Then she sat at the kitchen table with the rifle across her knees and waited. The hours stretched into eternity. Every sound made her jump: the creak of settling wood, the wind against the windows, the distant lowing of cattle. She kept thinking she heard hooves approaching, kept tensing for the sound of Marcus's voice. But it was Sawyer who finally returned, the sound of his horse's hooves, unmistakable now that she'd learned to recognize them. "Henry's on alert," he said, coming through the door. "Margaret's going to keep an eye on the road from their place. If anyone heads this way, she'll signal." "Signal how?" "Mirror flash. Old trick from the war. Works better than shouting." Clara set down the rifle with shaking hands. "I don't know how you're so calm." "I'm not calm. I'm focused. There's a difference." Sawyer hung up his coat. "Being calm means you're not scared. Being focused means you're scared, but you're not going to let it stop you from doing what needs doing." "How do you do that?" "Focus through the fear. Practice. And knowing what you're fighting for." He looked at her. "I've got something worth fighting for now. That makes it easier." The next 2 days passed in tense quiet. Sawyer didn't leave the ranch. He worked close to the house, always within earshot, always with one eye on the horizon. Clara fell into a rhythm of domestic tasks that helped keep her mind occupied: cooking, cleaning, mending clothes, teaching Lily her letters. It was almost peaceful, almost normal, like playing house while waiting for the world to end. On the third morning, Margaret Dawson came riding fast. Clara saw her through the kitchen window and felt her heart stop. "Sawyer." He was beside her in an instant. They watched Margaret dismount, her face flushed with urgency. "He's coming," she said before she'd even reached the porch. "The man from town. Henry saw him hire a horse this morning. He's got another man with him, big fellow, looks like muscle." Clara's knees went weak. "How long?" Sawyer asked. "Hour, maybe less. Henry's riding out to meet them, try to slow them down. Give you time to prepare." "Thank you, Margaret. Now get back home and stay there. Whatever happens, keep clear of it." "Sawyer, go." Margaret went. Clara stood frozen in the doorway, watching the dust of Margaret's horse disappear over the rise. "Clara." Sawyer's voice cut through her panic. "Clara, look at me." She turned. His face was calm, no focused. His eyes steady. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to take Lily into the bedroom. You're going to lock that door and not open it for anyone except me. Understand? But no arguments. Your job is to protect Lily. My job is to protect both of you. We each do our part." "What if something goes wrong? What if they—" Sawyer took her face in his hands. Nothing's gonna go wrong. I didn't survive 4 years of war to die on my own porch. You can't promise that. No. But I can promise that I'll fight like hell. And I can promise that whatever happens, I don't regret a single thing about these past few days. His thumb brushed her cheek. You gave me a family, Clara. You gave me a reason to keep going. That's worth fighting for. Clara felt tears spill down her cheeks. I'm scared. I know. Be scared later. Right now, be strong. For Lily. He kissed her. Not on the forehead this time, on the mouth. Quick and fierce and full of everything neither of them had words for. Then he was gone, striding toward the barn to get his rifle. Clara ran to the bedroom. Lily looked up from her doll eyes wide. Mama? Come here, baby. We're going to play a game. We're going to stay very quiet and wait for Papa Sawyer. Is the bad man here? Clara gathered her daughter in her arms. He might be coming, but Papa Sawyer is going to send him away. We just have to be brave and quiet. Can you do that? Lily's small face was serious. I can be brave, Mama. I've been brave before. Yes, you have. You're the bravest girl I know. They huddled together on the bed, and Clara pulled the quilt around them both. Through the window she could see Sawyer on the porch, rifle in his hands, watching the road. Waiting. The wait was agony. Then hooves. More than one horse. Coming fast. Clara pressed her hand over Lily's mouth, silencing the small whimper that rose in the child's throat. Shh! I've got you. I've got you. Through the thin walls she heard voices. Sawyer Hartley. A voice she didn't recognize. Deep, rough. The hired muscle, probably. That's right. And you're on my property uninvited. My employer just wants to talk. Then let him talk. A pause. Then another voice, smooth-cultured, dripping with false civility. Marcus. Mr. Hartley, I apologize for the intrusion. My name is Marcus Whitmore. I believe you've been harboring my sister-in-law and niece. I've been sheltering my wife and daughter. If you're talking about Clara and Lily, that's who they are now. Wife. Marcus's laugh was sharp, incredulous. You married her. My, she does work fast. Tell me, Mr. Hartley, how much did she pay you for this little charade? Or did she offer something else to seal the bargain? Clara's hands clenched into fists. Even now, even here, Marcus couldn't resist his cruelty. You'll want to watch your mouth. Sawyer's voice was dangerous. That's my wife you're talking about. Your wife? Yes, I'm sure that's very official. And I'm sure it will hold up beautifully in court when I prove this marriage is a fraud designed to thwart legal guardianship proceedings. Those proceedings ended when Clara remarried. You got no legal standing here. I have guardianship papers signed by a judge in Philadelphia. This ain't Philadelphia. The law is the law, Mr. Hartley. It doesn't change just because you cross state lines. Actually, it does. Texas, Wyoming. These territories, we got our own courts, our own judges, and I've got documentation filed proper with every one of them. Sawyer's voice was flat. You want to challenge my marriage, challenge my daughter's adoption. Go ahead, file suit, but do it through proper channels, not by showing up at a man's home with hired guns. I'm not here to fight, Marcus said smoothly. I'm here to talk, to reach a reasonable agreement. Surely you can see that it's in everyone's best interest for this matter to be resolved quietly. Here's what I see. I see a man who's been chasing a widow and a child across half the country. I see a man who's more interested in an inheritance than in a little girl's welfare. And I see a man who brought muscle to a conversation because he knows he can't win on his own merits. You don't know what you're dealing with. I know exactly what I'm dealing with. A bully with money who thinks he can take whatever he wants. Sawyer's voice hardened. I've faced worse than you, Marcus Whitmore. I've faced worse, and I'm still standing. Now get off my land before I remove you myself. You'd threaten violence in front of witnesses. I'm not threatening anything. I'm making a promise. You come near my wife or my daughter and I will end you. That's not a threat, that's a fact. Silence. Clara held her breath. This isn't over, Marcus said finally. His voice had lost its smoothness, revealing the ugly anger beneath. I'll be back. With lawyers, with marshals, with whatever it takes. That child belongs to me and I will have her. You'll have nothing. Sawyer's voice was cold. Now leave, while you still can. More silence. Then hooves retreating. Clara sagged against the headboard, tears streaming down her face. Lily was crying too silently, her small body shaking. Is he gone, Mama? He's gone, baby. Papa Sawyer sent him away. The bedroom door opened. Sawyer stood there, rifle still in his hands, face pale but determined. He's gone. For now. Clara launched herself at him, throwing her arms around his neck. He caught her, held her tight, one hand stroking her hair while she sobbed against his shoulder. It's all right. You're safe. You're both safe. He'll come back. You heard him. He'll come back with lawyers and marshals and... Let him. Sawyer pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. Clara, listen to me. I meant what I said. Every word. Whatever he brings, we'll face it together. He's not taking Lily. Not today. Not ever. How can you be so sure? Because I've got something he doesn't. What? Sawyer looked at her, at Lily peeking out from behind her mother's skirts, and something soft entered his eyes. I've got a family worth fighting for. And that makes all the difference. That night, after Lily had finally fallen asleep, Clara sat on the porch beside Sawyer. The night was cold and clear, stars scattered across the sky like spilled diamonds. Thank you, she said quietly, for standing up to him. Didn't do anything any decent man wouldn't do. That's not true. Most men would have walked away. Most men would have decided it wasn't their fight. Sawyer was quiet for a moment. Maybe I'm not most men. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. It felt natural. Right. What happens now? Now we prepare. I'll ride to town tomorrow, talk to the sheriff, file a formal complaint about Marcus's harassment. Make sure there's a record of everything that happened today. And if he does come back with marshals, then we show them our documents. Marriage certificate, adoption papers. Everything filed legal and proper. Sawyer's arm settled around her shoulders. Clara, I'm not going to lie to you and say this will be easy. It might get ugly before it gets better. But we've got truth on our side. And out here that counts for something. Clara closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of him against her side. I never thanked you properly, she said. For everything. For saving us from that storm. For marrying me. For standing up to Marcus today. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. She opened her eyes, looked up at him. Because a week ago I was dying in the snow, convinced that God had abandoned us. Now I'm sitting on a porch with a husband who just faced down the man who's been haunting my nightmares for 8 months. That's not nothing, Sawyer. That's everything. He looked at her for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression, something tender and vulnerable that she hadn't seen before. You know what I thought that night I found you in the storm. What? I thought God was giving me a second chance, a chance to save someone after I couldn't save Rachel. His voice roughened. But it's more than that now. You and Lily, you're not just people I saved, you're my family. And I'll protect my family with everything I've got. Clara reached up, touched his face. The stubble was growing back rough against her palm. I know I said I didn't know if I could love you, she whispered. That first night when you asked if I wanted this, I said I didn't know. I remember. I think I was wrong. She swallowed hard. I think maybe I was already starting to love you even then. I was just too scared to admit it. Sawyer's breath caught. Clara, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. He pulled her close, and this time when he kissed her, it wasn't quick or desperate. It was slow and deep and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both of them breathing hard, Sawyer rested his forehead against hers. I love you too, he said quietly. I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other. But I love you, Clara Hartley. You and Lily both. Clara smiled through tears. Then I guess we'll figure out the rest together. Together. Sawyer agreed. They sat on the porch until the cold drove them inside, and when Clara went to bed that night, she didn't go alone. 3 weeks passed like a held breath. Clara woke each morning expecting disaster and found instead something that felt dangerously like happiness. Sawyer taught her to shoot standing behind her with his arms guiding hers patient as she flinched at every recoil. Lily grew stronger, her cough fading until it was nothing but a memory, her laughter ringing through the house like music. They became a family, not through grand gestures, but through small ones. Sawyer reading to Lily by firelight, Clara mending his shirts while he worked the ledgers. The three of them sharing meals at the scarred wooden table, talking about nothing and everything. And at night in the darkness of their shared bedroom, Clara learned what it meant to be truly known by another person. "You're thinking too loud," Sawyer murmured one night, pulling her closer. "I can hear it from here. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Might be waiting a long time. Marcus doesn't give up. He never has." "Neither do I." Sawyer pressed a kiss to her hair. "Stop borrowing trouble from tomorrow. Today was good. Let that be enough." Clara tried. God help her, she tried. Then the letter came. Sawyer rode to town on a Tuesday morning for supplies, and came back with his face set in hard lines. He didn't speak until they were inside Lily safely playing in her room. "What is it?" He handed her the envelope. Official seal, federal court stamp. Clara's hands shook as she opened it. "Marcus filed suit," she said, her voice hollow. "He's challenging our marriage, claiming fraud, coercion, conspiracy to deprive him of his legal rights as Lily's guardian. I figured as much. There's a hearing, 3 weeks from now in Cheyenne." Clara looked up, her eyes wild. "Federal court, Sawyer, not local, not somewhere you have friends and reputation. Federal." "I know what federal means. He's going to win. He's got lawyers and money and connections, and we have nothing. We have truth. Truth doesn't matter when the other side has enough money to bury it." Sawyer took her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Clara, listen to me. I've already been in touch with some people, friends from my Army days. One of them is a lawyer now practicing in Denver. He's agreed to represent us." "A lawyer?" "Named Samuel Cross. We served together in the war. He's good, Clara. One of the best. And he owes me a favor." "What kind of favor?" "The kind where I pulled him out of a burning building at Antietam." Sawyer's voice was matter-of-fact. "He's been waiting 20 years to pay that debt. Now he gets his chance." Clara felt some of the panic recede, replaced by a fragile hope. "When does he arrive?" "End of the week. He's bringing everything he needs to build our case. And if it's not enough, then we'll find something else. We'll keep fighting until there's nothing left to fight with." Sawyer's jaw tightened. "I made you a promise, Clara. I intend to keep it." Samuel Cross arrived on a Friday afternoon. He was nothing like Clara expected. Tall and lean, with wire-rimmed spectacles and a gentle manner that seemed at odds with his reputation. But there was steel beneath the softness, a sharpness in his eyes that missed nothing. "Mrs. Hartley." He took her hand with formal courtesy. "Sawyer's told me everything. I want you to know that I believe in your case, and I'm going to do everything in my power to see justice done." "Thank you, Mr. Cross." "Samuel, please. Now I'm going to need you to tell me your story from the beginning. Every detail, no matter how small. The more I know, the better I can prepare." They sat at the kitchen table and Clara talked. For hours she talked. About Edward's death. About Marcus showing up at the funeral. About the corrupt judge in Philadelphia. And the guardianship papers that had set this nightmare in motion. Samuel took notes, asked questions, nodded at key points. "This judge in Philadelphia," he said finally. "Do you know his name?" "Harrison. Judge Robert Harrison." Samuel's eyes lit up. "Harrison. That's interesting. Why?" "Because Judge Harrison was removed from the bench 6 months ago. Corruption charges. Half his rulings are being reviewed and overturned." Samuel smiled thinly. "Including, I suspect, the guardianship order for your daughter." Clara stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It means Marcus's entire legal foundation may be built on sand. If I can prove that the original guardianship was obtained through corruption, everything else falls apart." "Can you prove it?" "I can certainly try." Samuel closed his notebook. I'll need to send some telegrams, contact some colleagues back east. But Mrs. Hartley, I think you may have more ammunition here than you realize. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. Samuel worked day and night sending telegrams, receiving responses, building their case piece by piece. Clara watched him with a mixture of gratitude and anxiety, hardly daring to hope. Sawyer kept the ranch running, but he was never far from the house. He checked on Clara constantly, bringing her coffee, sitting with her when the fear got too heavy. "What if it doesn't work?" she asked one night, her voice small. "Then we'll figure out something else." "There might not be anything else. If the court rules against us." "Hey!" Sawyer pulled her close. "We're not there yet. Don't give up before the fight's even started." "I'm not giving up. I'm just scared." "I know. I am too." Clara looked up at him. "You are?" "Course I am. I've got everything to lose now. You lily this life we're building." He touched her face. "But being scared doesn't mean we stop fighting. It means we fight smarter." The day before they were set to leave for Cheyenne, Margaret Dawson came by with news. "Marcus is already there," she reported, breathless from her ride. "Checked into the Grand Hotel 3 days ago. Word is he's got a whole team of lawyers with him. 4 or 5 of them, all from Philadelphia." Clara's heart sank. 4 lawyers. "We only need one good one," Sawyer said firmly. "Samuel's worth 10 of whatever hired guns Marcus dragged out here." "There's more." Margaret's face was troubled. "He's been talking to people, important people, the territorial governor, a couple of federal judges. He's trying to poison the well before you even get there." "Let him talk." Sawyer's voice was hard. "Talk's cheap. Evidence is what counts." They left at dawn the next morning. Lily sat between Clara and Sawyer in the wagon, clutching her doll Rosie, and watching the landscape roll by with wide eyes. "Mama, why do we have to go to court?" "Because Uncle Marcus is trying to take you away from us, but we're going to show the judge that you belong with Papa Sawyer and me." "But I don't want to go with Uncle Marcus. He's mean." "I know, baby. That's what we're going to tell the judge." "Will the judge believe us?" Clara met Sawyer's eyes over Lily's head. "We're going to make sure he does," Sawyer said. "Don't you worry, little one. Nobody's taking you anywhere." Cheyenne was bigger than Clara expected. Busy streets, tall buildings, people everywhere. It felt overwhelming after weeks on the quiet ranch. Samuel met them at the train station. His face was serious, but not defeated. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "Marcus has hired Judge William Foster to hear the case." "Hired a judge?" Clara's voice rose. "He can do that." "He didn't hire him directly, but Foster owes favors to some of Marcus's associates. It's not technically corrupt, but it's not exactly fair either." "So we've already lost." "No." Samuel's voice was firm. "We haven't lost anything yet. Foster may be friendly to Marcus, but he's not stupid. He won't rule against clear evidence just to please a business associate. We just have to make sure our evidence is strong enough that he can't ignore it." "And is it?" Samuel smiled. "Come with me. I have something to show you." He led them to a small office near the courthouse. Inside the desk was covered with papers, letters, documents. "I've been busy," Samuel said. "Very busy. And I've found some things that Marcus probably hoped would never see the light of day." He handed Clara a stack of papers. "These are financial records. Marcus Whitmore is deeply in debt. Gambling debts mostly, but also some questionable business dealings. He owes money to people who don't ask nicely for repayment. I knew he had debts, but that's not all." Samuel pulled out another document. "This is a letter from the estate executor in Philadelphia. Marcus has been stealing from the trust for years, long before Edward died. He's been forging documents, creating false expenses, siphoning money into his own accounts." Clara's hands were shaking. "He's been stealing Lily's inheritance." "Since she was born, apparently. By my calculations, he's taken nearly $8,000. Samuel's voice was grim. When your husband died and you became Lily's guardian, Marcus panicked. He knew it was only a matter of time before you discovered the missing money. That's why he moved so fast for guardianship. He needed control of the accounts before anyone realized what he'd done. So this was never about Lily. It was always about the money. Lily was just the means to an end. Clara sat down heavily, her mind reeling. Why didn't anyone catch this before? Because Marcus was careful, and because Judge Harrison was helping him cover his tracks for a price, of course. Samuel gathered the documents. But now we have proof. Actual proof. And tomorrow we're going to present it to Judge Foster and watch Marcus's entire case collapse. The courtroom was packed. Clara sat at the defendant's table with Sawyer on one side and Samuel on the other. Across the aisle, Marcus sat with his army of lawyers looking smug and confident. He'd barely glanced at Clara when they entered. As if she was beneath his notice. As if this was already over. Lily was in a back room with Margaret, who'd insisted on coming along to help. Clara hated having her daughter so close to all this ugliness, but Samuel had said it might be necessary for Lily to testify, and they needed her nearby. All rise, the Honorable Judge William Foster presiding. Everyone stood as the judge entered. He was older than Clara expected, with white hair and a stern face that gave nothing away. Be seated. This court is now in session. Foster shuffled some papers. The matter before us is Whitmore v. Hartley. Mr. Whitmore claims that the defendant Clara Hartley, formerly Clara Whitmore, kidnapped his niece, one Lily Whitmore, in violation of a legal guardianship order issued by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. He further claims that her subsequent marriage to Mr. Sawyer Hartley was a fraudulent attempt to circumvent said guardianship. Marcus's lead lawyer stood. That is correct, Your Honor. We intend to prove that Mrs. Hartley is an unfit mother who conspired with Mr. Hartley to steal a child from her rightful guardian. Mr. Cross, your response. Samuel rose, calm and composed. Your Honor, we intend to prove that no such kidnapping occurred as the guardianship order in question was obtained through fraud and corruption. We will demonstrate that Marcus Whitmore has no legitimate claim to Lily Whitmore, now Lily Hartley, and that his pursuit of this case is motivated entirely by financial self-interest. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Marcus's face darkened. Strong words, Mr. Cross. I hope you can back them up. I can, Your Honor. And I will. The proceedings began. Marcus's lawyers went first, laying out their case with practiced precision. They presented the guardianship papers, testified to Clara's erratic behavior following Edward's death, produced witnesses who claimed she was mentally unstable and incapable of caring for a child. Clara listened with growing horror. These people were lying under oath in a court of law and making it sound so convincing. Stay calm, Sawyer murmured, squeezing her hand under the table. Our turn's coming. When Samuel finally rose to present their defense, Clara held her breath. Your Honor, I'd like to start by addressing the guardianship order that Mr. Whitmore claims gives him authority over Lily Hartley. He approached the bench with a stack of papers. This order was signed by Judge Robert Harrison of the Philadelphia County Court. What the plaintiff's lawyers have failed to mention is that Judge Harrison was removed from the bench 6 months ago following a federal investigation into corruption. 37 of his rulings have been overturned, including several guardianship orders obtained under suspicious circumstances. The courtroom buzzed. Marcus's lawyers were on their feet objecting, but Foster waved them down. Continue, Mr. Cross. Furthermore, we have evidence that Marcus Whitmore paid Judge Harrison directly for the favorable ruling. Here are bank records showing a transfer of $500 from Mr. Whitmore's account to a shell company owned by Judge Harrison, dated 3 days before the guardianship order was signed. Samuel handed the documents to the judge. This is highly irregular, Marcus's lawyer protested. These records could be falsified. They're certified by the Philadelphia City Bank. Samuel interrupted. Feel free to verify them yourself. Foster studied the papers, his face unreadable. Continue, Mr. Cross. But the corruption doesn't end there. Samuel turned to face the courtroom. Marcus Whitmore didn't pursue guardianship of his niece out of concern for her welfare. He pursued it because he's been systematically stealing from her trust fund for years, and he needed control of the accounts to cover his tracks. Objection. Marcus's lawyer was on his feet. This is slander. It's fact. Samuel's voice was sharp. I have here a forensic audit of the Whitmore Family Trust, conducted by the accounting firm of Morris & Associates. It shows that over the past 6 years, Marcus Whitmore has embezzled approximately $8,000 through fraudulent expenses, forged signatures, and falsified records. He handed another stack of papers to the judge. Edward Whitmore never knew. He trusted his brother to manage the family finances. But when Edward died and Clara became Lily's guardian, Marcus realized she might discover the theft. So he moved quickly to have her declared unfit to obtain guardianship, to silence any questions before they could be asked. Clara watched Marcus's face. The smugness was gone, replaced by something that looked like panic. This is absurd! Marcus burst out, rising from his seat. These documents are forgeries. This entire proceeding is a sham. Mr. Whitmore, you will be silent or you will be removed from this courtroom. Foster's voice was cold. Sit down. Marcus sat, but his face was red with fury. Mr. Cross, do you have anything else? Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to call a witness, Lily Hartley. Clara's heart stopped. Samuel, no. Trust me, he murmured. This is important. Margaret brought Lily in. The child looked so small in the big courtroom, clutching her doll against her chest. But her eyes found Clara's across the room, and she straightened her shoulders. Samuel approached her gently. Hello, Lily. Do you know why you're here today? Yes, sir. To tell the judge the truth. That's right. Can you tell the judge who you live with? I live with Mama and Papa Sawyer, on the ranch. And do you like living there? Lily's face lit up. I love it. Papa Sawyer has horses and chickens and a cat named Whiskers, and Mama teaches me my letters. And we have breakfast together every morning. That sounds wonderful. Lily, do you see anyone in this room that you're afraid of? Lily's expression changed. Her eyes found Marcus, and she shrank back. Him, she whispered, pointing. Uncle Marcus. Why are you afraid of Uncle Marcus? Because he yells, and he said mean things about Mama, and he wanted to take me away. Did you want to go with him? No. Lily's voice was stronger now. I want to stay with Mama and Papa Sawyer. They love me. Uncle Marcus doesn't love me. He just wants Mama's money. A gasp went through the courtroom. Lily, Samuel asked gently, how do you know he wants the money? Because I heard him, back in Philadelphia before we ran away. He was talking to a man in our house. He said he needed to get control of my counts before anyone found out what he did. Lily's brow furrowed. I didn't know what counts meant then, but Papa Sawyer explained it. It's money that my real papa left for me. Clara felt tears streaming down her face. Her brave, brilliant daughter, remembering details that could save them all. Thank you, Lily. You've been very helpful. Samuel turned to the judge. Your Honor, I have no further questions. Marcus's lawyer stood to cross-examine, but he barely asked 3 questions before Lily's honest, unwavering answers made him give up. There was nothing he could do to shake her testimony. When Lily was dismissed, she ran straight to Clara and climbed into her lap. Did I do good, Mama? You did so good, baby. So good. Judge Foster called a recess. When court reconvened an hour later, his face was grave. I've reviewed the evidence presented by both parties, and I've come to a decision. Clara gripped Sawyer's hand so hard her knuckles went white. The guardianship order issued by Judge Harrison is hereby vacated. There is sufficient evidence of judicial corruption to render it invalid. Marcus made a strangled sound. Furthermore, the marriage between Clara Whitmore and Sawyer Hartley is ruled legitimate. There is no evidence of fraud or coercion, only 2 adults entering into a legal union for mutual benefit. Clara let out a sob. The adoption of Lily Whitmore by Sawyer Hartley is likewise upheld. She is in the eyes of this court, Lily Hartley, daughter of Sawyer, and Clara Hartley. Your Honor, Marcus's lawyer tried to interrupt. I'm not finished. Foster's voice was sharp. As for Marcus Whitmore, the evidence of embezzlement presented here today is deeply troubling. I am referring this matter to the federal prosecutor for investigation. Mr. Whitmore, I strongly suggest you retain criminal counsel. Marcus's face went white. This court rules in favor of the defendants. Case dismissed. The gavel fell. Clara collapsed against Sawyer, sobbing with relief. He held her tight, his own eyes wet. It's over, he said. It's really over. We won, Clara whispered. We actually won. Lily squeezed between them, wrapping her small arms around both their necks. Does this mean we get to stay together forever? Forever, little one. Sawyer's voice was rough. Forever and always. Across the courtroom, Marcus was arguing furiously with his lawyers. But Clara didn't care anymore. He couldn't touch them now. The law had spoken. Samuel approached, a rare smile on his face. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Hartley. Justice prevailed. Thank you. Clara took his hand. Thank you for everything. Thanks, Sawyer. He's the one who pulled me out of that burning building. Samuel glanced at his old friend. Consider the debt paid. They walked out of the courthouse into the afternoon sun. Clara took a deep breath of fresh air, feeling like she was breathing freely for the first time in months. What now? She asked. Sawyer put his arm around her, Lily perched on his other hip. Now we go home. Home. The word had never sounded so beautiful. The ride back to the ranch was the happiest journey of Clara's life. Lily chattered the whole way about what she'd say to the chickens when she got back, about whether Whiskers had missed them, about what they should have for dinner to celebrate. Can we have cake, Mama? Mrs. Margaret makes good cake. We'll see, sweetheart. Sawyer drove with one hand on the reins and one arm around Clara. Every now and then he'd look at her like he couldn't quite believe she was real. What? She asked finally. Just thinking. About what? About that night I found you in the storm. About how close I came to riding a different direction. But you didn't. No. Best decision I ever made. They arrived at the ranch as the sun was setting, painting everything gold. Clara stood in the yard and looked at the house, their house, and felt something settle deep in her chest. We're home, baby, she said to Lily. I know, Mama. Lily grinned. I told you Papa Sawyer would keep us safe. Yes, you did. That night, after Lily was asleep and the house was quiet, Clara and Sawyer sat on the porch together. The stars were brilliant overhead, the night peaceful and still. I need to tell you something, Clara said. What's that? When you found us in that storm, I'd given up. I was ready to die. I'd made peace with it even. Sawyer's arm tightened around her. But you came, and you didn't just save our lives, you gave us a reason to keep living. Clara turned to look at him. I love you, Sawyer. Not because you saved us, not because you protected us, but because of who you are. Because you're good and kind and strong in all the ways that matter. Clara, let me finish. She took his hand. I know this started as an arrangement, a legal convenience. But somewhere along the way, it became real. You became real. And I want you to know that I'm not just grateful to be your wife. I'm honored. Sawyer was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. You know what Rachel said to me the day I left for the war? She said, come back to me. Whatever happens, find your way back. Did you? I tried, but I was too late. She was gone before I could keep my promise. He turned to Clara, his eyes bright. I've spent 10 years feeling like a failure, like I let her down. But you and Lily, you gave me a second chance, a chance to be the man I always wanted to be, a chance to keep my promises. And have you kept them? I'm trying. He raised her hand to his lips. Every day I'm trying. They sat together as the night deepened, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their lives and built something beautiful from the pieces. What do you think the future holds? Clara asked. I don't know. Sawyer pulled her closer. But whatever it is, we'll face it together. Together, Clara agreed. And in that moment, with the stars wheeling overhead and her daughter safe inside and her husband warm beside her, Clara finally understood what home really meant. It wasn't a place. It wasn't walls or a roof or land. It was this feeling of belonging, of being known and loved and protected. It was family, and she was never letting it go. The months that followed the trial were the sweetest Clara had ever known. Spring came to Wyoming like a blessing. The snow melted, the prairie turned green, and wildflowers bloomed in carpets of yellow and purple that stretched to the horizon. Lily spent her days chasing butterflies and learning to collect eggs from the chickens, her laughter ringing across the ranch like church bells. Clara found herself settling into rhythms she'd never imagined possible. Cooking breakfast while Sawyer fed the horses, teaching Lily her letters on the porch in the afternoon sun, falling asleep each night in her husband's arms, safe and warm and loved. And, "You're smiling," Sawyer said one morning, catching her at the stove. "Am I?" "You are. You've been doing that a lot lately." "I suppose I have a lot to smile about." He came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "Reckon you do." She leaned back against him, feeling the solid warmth of his chest against her back. This was real. This was hers. After everything she'd been through, she'd finally found peace. "Mama! Papa Sawyer!" Lily came bursting through the door, her face flushed with excitement. "Mrs. Margaret is coming. I saw her wagon on the road." Margaret Dawson arrived with news and a basket of fresh bread. "Thought you should know," she said, settling into a chair at the kitchen table. "Got word from town this morning. Marcus Whitmore was arrested 2 weeks ago in Philadelphia. Federal marshals took him right out of his hotel room." Clara's heart stuttered. "Arrested? For embezzlement. Apparently that evidence your lawyer presented at the trial opened up a whole investigation. They found even more money missing than anyone suspected." Margaret shook her head. "He's facing 15 years in prison, maybe more." Clara sat down heavily, her legs suddenly weak. "It's really over," she whispered. "He can't ever come back." "Not unless he can walk through prison walls." Margaret reached over and squeezed her hand. "You're safe, Clara. You and Lily both. For good this time." After Margaret left, Clara found Sawyer in the barn brushing down his horse. "You heard." "I heard." He set down the brush and turned to face her. "How do you feel?" "I don't know. Relieved. Grateful. Maybe a little sad." "Sad? Marcus was my husband's brother. Edward loved him despite everything. I keep thinking about what Edward would say if he knew how things turned out." Sawyer was quiet for a moment. "I think he'd say you did what you had to do. You protected his daughter. You kept her safe." He stepped closer, took her hands in his. "That's all any father could ask." "You really believe that?" "I know it." He lifted her hands to his lips. "Clara, you're the strongest woman I've ever met. You survived things that would have broken most people. And you did it all for Lily. Edward would be proud of you. I'm proud of you." Clara felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Sure you could. You were already doing it when I found you. I just helped with the last part. The last part mattered. Then I'm glad I could be there for it." Summer came hot and golden. The ranch thrived. Sawyer hired 2 more hands to help with the cattle, and the herd grew larger than it had been in years. Clara took over the household accounts, bringing order to ledgers that had been neglected for too long. "You're good at this," Sawyer said, watching her work one evening. "My father was a shopkeeper. He taught me figures before he taught me letters." "Smart man." "He was. He'd have liked you, I think." "Would he?" "You're honest, hard-working, kind." Clara smiled. Those were the things he valued most. "What about your mother?" "She died when I was 12. Fever took her." Clara's voice softened. "I barely remember her face anymore. Just her hands, how gentle they were when she braided my hair." Sawyer pulled her close. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I had happy years with her. That's more than some people get." They held each other as the sun set, and Clara thought about all the people she'd lost: her mother, her father, Edward. So much grief, so much pain, but also, somehow, so much love. Sawyer. I need to tell you something. He pulled back to look at her face. What is it? Clara took a breath. She'd been waiting for the right moment, but maybe there was no right moment. Maybe you just had to say the words and trust that everything would work out. I'm pregnant. Sawyer went very still. What? I'm pregnant. About 2 months along, I think. I wasn't sure at first, but now I am. He stared at her, his face unreadable. Clara felt her heart hammering against her ribs. Say something. He shook his head like a man trying to clear his vision. Clara, are you sure? I'm sure. And then he was kissing her, fierce and tender and full of joy. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. A baby, he said, his voice rough. We're going to have a baby. We are. After Rachel, I thought I'd never. He couldn't finish the sentence. Clara cupped his face in her hands. You're going to be a wonderful father. You already are with Lily. This is different. He pressed his forehead to hers. This is everything I ever wanted and never thought I'd have. Then I guess we're both getting second chances. They stood there as the stars came out. Two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their lives and built something new from the ashes. We should tell Lily, Clara said finally. We should. How do you think she'll take it? Only one way to find out. They found Lily in her room playing with her doll Rosie. She looked up when they entered, her face curious. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, sweetheart. Clara sat on the bed beside her. Papa Sawyer and I have something to tell you. What? You're going to be a big sister. Lily's eyes went wide. A big sister? You mean a baby? Yes, baby. A baby. When? In the spring, we think. Lily was quiet for a moment, processing. Then her face split into the biggest grin Clara had ever seen. I'm going to be a big sister. I'm going to teach the baby everything, how to collect eggs and brush horses and find the best rocks by the creek. I'm sure you will. Can it be a girl? I want a sister. We don't get to choose, sweetheart. We'll love whoever comes. Lily threw her arms around Clara's neck. I love you, Mama, and I love Papa Sawyer, and I love the baby already. Clara held her daughter tight and felt Sawyer's hand on her shoulder, anchoring her. This was her family now. Not the one she'd started with, not the one she'd expected, but the one she'd built, the one she'd fought for, the one she'd died to protect. And it was perfect. Fall arrived in a blaze of color. The aspen trees turned gold, the air grew crisp, and Clara's belly grew round. Sawyer watched her like she might break, hovering nearby whenever she climbed stairs or lifted anything heavier than a coffee cup. I'm pregnant, not dying, she told him one morning, exasperated and amused. I know, You just what? I lost Rachel, he said quietly. She was pregnant when she died. I wasn't there to protect her. I can't. I won't let that happen again. Clara's irritation melted away. She took his face in her hands. Sawyer, look at me. He met her eyes. I'm not Rachel. This isn't the same situation. We have a doctor nearby. We have Margaret and the Dawsons. We have everything we need. She kissed him softly. I'm going to be fine. The baby's going to be fine. You have to believe that. I'm trying. Try harder. She smiled to soften the words. I need you focused and strong, not hovering over me like I'm made of glass. Yes, ma'am. That's better. Winter came early that year. The first snow fell in late November, blanketing the ranch in white. Clara watched it through the window, remembering another snowstorm, another desperate night. How different everything was now. You're thinking about it again, Sawyer said, coming up beside her. About what? The night I found you. Clara nodded slowly. It's hard not to when the snow falls. I remember how cold I was, how sure I was that we were going to die. But you didn't. But I didn't. She leaned against him. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you'd ridden a different direction that night. Don't. Don't wonder. Don't think about it. The past is the past. What matters is now. What matters is this. He put his hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick against his palm. What matters is the future we're building. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just weren't paying attention. Clara laughed, and the sound echoed through the warm house, mingling with the crackle of the fire and Lily's voice from the other room singing to her dolls. This was happiness. This was home. The baby came in March, on a night when the wind howled and the snow fell thick and fast. Clara labored for 12 hours, Margaret at her side, Sawyer pacing the main room like a caged animal. Lily had been sent to the Dawsons' place, safe from the chaos and fear. "Push," Margaret instructed. "One more time, Clara. You're almost there." Clara screamed and pushed and felt like she was being torn in two. Then suddenly it was over. A thin, reedy cry filled the room. "It's a boy," Margaret said, her voice thick with emotion. "A beautiful, healthy boy." She laid the baby on Clara's chest, and Clara looked down at her son for the first time, red-faced and squalling with a thatch of dark hair and Sawyer's nose. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We've been waiting for you." The door burst open and Sawyer was there, his face pale with worry. "Clara, is she—" "I'm fine." Clara looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "We're fine. Come meet your son." Sawyer crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt beside the bed. He looked at the baby, then at Clara, then back at the baby. "A son," he said, his voice cracking. "We have a son." "We do." He reached out with trembling fingers and touched the baby's cheek. The infant turned toward the touch, mouth working, and something in Sawyer's face shattered and reformed into something new. "I never thought—" He couldn't finish. "I know." Clara took his hand. "But here we are. Here we are." They named him William after Clara's first husband. "Are you sure?" Sawyer asked when she suggested it. He wasn't. He was Lily's father. He was a good man who died too young, and this way both of Lily's fathers will live on in this family." Clara touched Sawyer's face. "Is that all right?" "It's more than all right. It's perfect." Lily adored her baby brother from the first moment she saw him. "He's so small," she whispered, peering into the cradle. "Was I ever that small? Smaller, if you can believe it." "I'll protect him, Mama. I'll make sure nothing bad ever happens to him." "I know you will, sweetheart." Lily reached into the cradle and let William wrap his tiny fingers around her pinky. "I'm your big sister," she told him seriously. "That means I'm in charge, but don't worry, I'll be nice about it." Clara and Sawyer exchanged smiles over their children's heads. This was what they'd built. This was what they'd fought for. A family bound not by blood alone, but by choice and love, and the stubborn refusal to give up. Spring came again. Clara stood on the porch with William in her arms, watching Sawyer teach Lily to ride a gentle old mare. The child's laughter carried across the yard, bright and free. "Higher, Papa. Make her go higher. Hold on tight." Clara smiled, feeling the spring breeze on her face and the warm weight of her son against her chest. A year ago, she'd been dying in a snowstorm, convinced that hope was a luxury she could no longer afford. Now look at her. A husband who loved her, children who needed her, a home that was truly hers. "You look happy." She turned to find Margaret Dawson climbing the porch steps, a basket over her arm. "I am happy. Happier than I've ever been." "You deserve it after everything you've been through." "Do I? More than anyone I know." Margaret set down her basket and took Clara's hands. "You're a good woman, Clara Hartley. A good wife, a good mother. Don't ever let anyone tell you different." "I won't." Sawyer brought Lily back to the house, the child chattering excitedly about everything she'd learned. "Did you see me, Mama? Did you see how fast I went?" "I saw, sweetheart. You're a natural." Papa Sawyer says I'll be riding by myself before summer. Won't I, Papa? If you keep practicing like you did today, I don't doubt it. They went inside together, the whole family plus Margaret and Clara served coffee and the fresh bread Margaret had brought. The conversation flowed easily. Ranch business town gossip plans for the summer. This was what life was supposed to be. Not the desperate survival of the past year, but this. Ordinary moments with extraordinary people. Small joys that added up to something magnificent. After Margaret left, Clara put William down for his nap and found Sawyer on the porch watching the sunset. Room for one more? Always. She settled beside him, his arm coming around her shoulders automatically. What are you thinking about? Rachel. Clara tensed slightly. What about her? I used to feel guilty. Loving you, building this life. Like I was betraying her memory. Sawyer shook his head slowly. But I don't anymore. I think she'd be happy. I think she'd be glad I found someone to share my life with instead of just existing alone. She sounds like she was a good person. She was. You'd have liked her. She'd have liked you too. He pulled Clara closer. But she's gone. And you're here. And I'm grateful for that. Every single day I'm grateful. I'm grateful too. They sat in silence as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Clara. Do you ever regret it? Running away from Philadelphia, going through everything you went through? She thought about the question. About the terror and the hunger and the cold. About Marcus and his cruelty. About the night in the storm when she'd been ready to die. No, she said finally, because it all led here. Every terrible moment, every desperate choice, it all led to you, to this family, to this life, and I wouldn't trade any of it. Even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts. They made me who I am. They made us who we are. Sawyer kissed her forehead. Have I told you lately that I love you? Not in the last hour. I love you, Clara Hartley. I love our children. I love this life we've built. His voice was rough with emotion. And I'll spend every day I have left making sure you know it. I know it already. She turned to face him. But I don't mind hearing it again. He kissed her then slow and deep, and Clara felt the last of her old fears finally release their grip. She was safe. She was loved. She was home. Not because someone had rescued her, but because she'd rescued herself with help along the way. Yes, but ultimately through her own strength, her own courage, her own refusal to give up. The widow who'd whispered, "We haven't eaten in 5 days," was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew her own worth. A mother who'd fought for her children. A wife who'd found love in the most unexpected place. The night deepened around them, stars emerging one by one. Inside the house, Lily was singing to her baby brother, her voice sweet and off-key. The cattle lowed in the distance. A coyote called somewhere out on the prairie. All the sounds of home. We should go in, Clara said reluctantly. In a minute. Sawyer held her tighter. Let me just have this moment a little longer. So they stayed, two people who'd found each other against impossible odds, watching the stars wheel overhead and listening to the sounds of the family they'd built. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new moments of fear and triumph and ordinary grace. But tonight, there was only this love, hard-won and precious, blazing bright against the darkness. And that was more than enough. That was everything. Clara Hartley had crawled through snow and fire to find her place in the world. She had begged for bread from strangers and stared down men who wanted to destroy her. She had lost everything and built it back again piece by piece, choice by choice. And now, standing in the doorway of her home with her husband's hand in hers and her children's laughter echoing through the rooms, she knew the truth with absolute certainty. The storm had not broken her. It had forged her. And she would never be broken again.